Vedic Psychology, and in this evening's session we are going to begin to look at the form of the mind, the structure of the mind as it is presented in Srimad Bhagavatam. This will be today's topic, and this is leading in tomorrow's topic. Actually, this is really the next 2 days. We're covering more or less the same thing, but just going into greater depth. So tomorrow will even get more interesting than today, because we'll begin to look at the functions of the mind and the different levels of consciousness and how they come about, how they're related to the Supreme Lord in his Purusha avatar forms, Mahavishnu, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and Kshirodakashaya Vishnu. It's very interesting to understand that, as we know, our mind, intelligence, this is provided by the Paramatma. So it's very interesting to know how different levels of mind are generated from different forms of Paramatma, Super Soul, Sri Vishnu. If we can understand this, then it is possible for us, through 24 hours of the day, seeing our mind in different states of consciousness. I'm speaking of Jagrata, wakefulness, Svapna, dreaming sleep, Susupti, dreamless sleep. These states of consciousness will remind us of the Lord. And so this could be a big step in our Krishna consciousness. But that's tomorrow, when we get into these levels of consciousness and looking more closely at functions of mind. Actually, these mental functions is going to take us a few more days to cover into next week. So right now we're going to begin. Put this on the board. I'm not going to start talking about this right away, but here you see in graphic presentation an overall look at conditioned consciousness, the structures of conditioned consciousness. But we will begin talking about the influence of Maya, the general influence of Maya, the illusory energy, upon the living entity. So Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 20, verse 6, that there are two kinds of covering powers exhibited by Maya. One is called Prakshepaatmika, and the other is called Avaranatmika. When one is determined to get out of material bondage, the Prakshepaatmika Shakti, the spell of diversion, impels one to remain in conditioned life fully satisfied by sense gratification. Due to the other power, Avaranatmika, a conditioned soul feels satisfied even if he is rotting in the body of a pig or a worm in stool. To release a conditioned soul from material bondage is very difficult, because the spell of Maya is so strong. So, two potencies of Maya. This amounts to the conditioning of our original consciousness. Let's look at this word conditioning for a moment, and this will help us to understand more clearly how these two potencies are working on us. So conditioning, conditioned reflex, this is a term known to modern psychology, and it is traced back to some famous experiments done around the beginning of, now we have to say, the last century, the 20th century. Now we're in the 21st century. So there were some famous experiments done around the beginning of the 20th century by a researcher, Russian researcher named Ivan Pavlov. You might have heard of the name Pavlov. It's always associated with Pavlov's dogs. He was working with dogs. And he is the one who's said to have discovered, they always say this in the West, someone discovered something, and then it gets his name. Although this conditioning is long described in Vedic scriptures for thousands of years. It is pointed out by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita under the word nibbadnanti, the conditioned state of the soul. But anyway, in the West it has this name, conditioned reflex, which was given by this Mr. or Dr. Pavlov. So he had dogs as his subjects of experiment, and when he would bring the food to the dogs at their feeding time, he would ring a bell. And this was a regular practice, always ringing a bell when food was served. And dogs, you know, when food is brought before them, they salivate. So after some time of ringing the bell when food was served, he stopped serving food, just rang the bell. And then he noted what he called the conditioned reflex in the dogs, that they would salivate hearing the sound of the bell only. So this is a very, very excellent and clear definition or presentation of conditioning, what conditioning means. Now we're going to have to be hearing this sound throughout our lecture. I'm afraid that's not acceptable. Because
conditioning.
Either sound or me talking, not both. Doesn't work. So, okay, I'm going to stop. This has to.
Press this button.
I can't do this.
Okay.
Technology, I find, is not at all helpful for me. Maybe for you, but not for me. Unless you know how to really use technology without making a disturbance. So, where was I? Yes, conditioning. So, two powers of Maya. So, first, we become swayed off the proper path of satisfaction. So the dogs, they began to identify their satisfaction eating with the sound of the bell. So this is the first phase of being conditioned by Maya. And the second phase is that even when there's no satisfaction, still the dog is reacting as if it is there. It is reacting to something that will not give satisfaction as if it will. You understand? The ringing of the bell will never satisfy our hunger. But the dogs have been conditioned to react to the sound of the bell as if it will. So this is the spirit soul's general relationship with the material energy. The material energy, I was giving the example the other day of the shadow of the hand, because material energy is called chaya, chaya shakti, chaya prakriti, shadow energy, shadow nature. So the shadow of my hand, although it has a form like my hand and can move as my hand is moving, so it appears to have the same characteristics of a hand. But when we try to do practical work, like pick up my cup so that I can have a drink, that cannot be done with the shadow. So the shadow doesn't have any potency, although it has form and movement. And so Maya, material nature, is just like that for the soul. The material nature has no potency to satisfy us. But yet we become conditioned to not only believe that it has, but we're deeply conditioned. We respond to material nature on a visceral. Visceral means, in the guts. Actually, it means right down into the tissues and right down into the subconscious mind and all these very fundamental aspects of our being. All of that is tuned into the material nature to respond to it as if material nature can satisfy me. Just like the dogs involuntarily salivated when they heard the bell. You see, they couldn't help it. So this is what happens to the living entity. This is the meaning of conditioning. And Prabhupada, interestingly enough, Prabhupada used this very example of a ringing of a bell to point out Maya's influence over the living entity. This happened in 1966 at 26 Second Avenue in New York, the Matchless Gifts original ISKCON Center. On that street, 26 Second Avenue, that's a city, inner city neighborhood. So there are families living in apartment buildings, there are children on the street. So in the summer, the ice cream trucks used to ply the street. And when the ice cream truck would come by, it's playing some music, which is a kind of melody made by an amplified bell sound. And then hearing this bell melody, the children would flock to this truck. The truck would stop and ice cream would be sold. So this would happen right outside the Matchless Gifts with a big window looking out. You could see this scene when Srila Prabhupada would be giving his talk. And the children would be screeching, crying, "I want chocolate, I want vanilla," like that. So it would be a little disturbance during the lecture. And so Srila Prabhupada would pointed out when this bell would be heard, and the ice cream truck is coming, and the kids would start yelling and running to the truck, Prabhupada would say, "See, this sound, this is Maya calling, come and enjoy me, come and enjoy me." And everyone goes running. You see. Now the thing is, there actually is no, for the soul, enjoyment in Maya, because obviously the soul is eternal. And our original desire is for eternal happiness. And Maya does not have the potency to provide that. What Maya provides is some very fleeting, very temporary tingling of our material sense endings. You see? The taste buds, in the example of the ice cream. And how long is that pleasure with us? We put the ice cream on the tongue and lick it, and after a few seconds it's gone. You see? And then if you want to say, "But then I'm satisfied," no, you're not. Because after some time, again, the belly and the tongue are calling, satisfy me, give me something. So, but we become, you see, the conditioned soul accepts it. And in the most part, most living entities in this world that we're seeing now, we look out, we see living in the form of trees and birds and most of the people also, most of the human beings, they don't question this. That's conditioning. Just accept it. That's life. There's some desire manifests in the senses. Let us satisfy it. Provide the sense object. There's some tingling of the nerve endings. That's satisfaction. And then it's gone. And then, that particular form of lust is now satiated for a little while. But then it comes back. More. And again we have to run and And that means working, of course, to satisfy the senses. One needs money, ultimately, and money we get from work. So we're working to satisfy the senses. And most living entities don't question this. So this is conditioning. And there's no ultimate sense satisfaction, because in the background of all this, of course, there is this hunger. It's a constant hunger for something new, something more, something different. This is always pushing the living entities. More, never satisfied. It's well known that even people get all of the basic field of activities and sense objects necessary to keep the senses in touch with the objects all the time. Still, they're not satisfied. You see? They want it more, they want it different, they become bored, they become, this nice word, jaded. Jaded means even though everything is there, it becomes like disgusting for them. Oh, I'm tired of this, you see. And they want to shift into something else. I don't want to be here anymore in Auckland, New Zealand. I want to move down to the South Island, or go to Australia, or go to California, go somewhere else. I have to go something different. You see, so there is an underlying need which is actually never satisfied, and which drives the living entity on. But the problem is it's just like Srila Prabhupada writes here, very, very excellent. Srila Prabhupada says, when one is determined to get out of material bondage, the pratyekapnika shakti, the spell of diversion, impels one to remain in conditional life, fully satisfied by sense gratification. So just like here, I just gave the example. Here is someone in Auckland, New Zealand, becomes, in a sense, determined to get out of material bondage. I'm tired of this place. This, Auckland, I don't like it anymore. All these people, they bore me. It's just a rat race here. Where should I want to go to Hawaii? That's a beautiful place. Everything's like heaven there, and hula girls and all these things. I'll be happy there. So he gets this hope. It's provided by Maya. And then he's working and making arrangements, and this is his inspiration to go to Hawaii. And then when he's in Hawaii, at last I'm here, paradise on earth, how wonderful. But after some time, I don't like this place. And he wants to get out of there. But then Maya provides a new hope, somewhere else in the material world. And he becomes fascinated with that. Or finally, there's always, when all else fails, just there's the hope that suicide will somehow alleviate my distress. So Maya is always providing some alternative. And for most living entities, that's as far as they get. Just going from one so-called alternative to another. But there is no alternative. It's the same thing, just repackaged. So this is the basic meaning. This is important for us to establish here what conditioning means. And to help us further understand, we can use some other examples that Prabhupada gave. Intoxication and addiction. So Srila Prabhupada often compared the state of being in Maya to the state of intoxication. You see? That taking some alcoholic drink or drug or whatever, it appears to open a new door to happiness. It appears to elevate us, raise our, they say get high. So that means that we think we're being raised up to some higher level of happiness or perception or whatever. But actually, it's really the opposite that's happening. You see, one is being dragged down deeper and deeper into ignorance. But this is Maya's trick. So intoxication, and this leads to addiction. In the name of happiness, one becomes habituated to take this substance, this drug, over and over and over again. And he thinks, the first few times he's taken it, it appears that he's being, in a sense, liberated. This being high or whatever is a kind of liberation experience. But addiction proves that it's not. Even though he continues to think that he's being liberated, he's getting high, but he needs to do this. He's forced to do this at the expense of everything else. See, a person who becomes addicted to alcohol or drugs, then his life gradually becomes narrowed more and more and more and more to just this one thing. In the beginning, his life, the range of his life activities included, a house and wife and family and a job and neighbors and friends and all of this thing. But as he's taking this intoxication more and more, it begins to narrow. You see, wife is complaining. Well, at some point he doesn't care anymore what she says, if she's here or not. So she leaves, taking the children. The boss complains, we can't have this on the job. But he doesn't care anymore what the boss says. Neighbors, he doesn't care. And finally, just any way he can, he just wants to get this substance in himself. So if it means, to cheat or rob or steal, break the law, risk being thrown into prison, he'll do it. You see, it's an all-consuming need. Like a fire, and you just shovel everything, your whole life into the fire to feed it. But there's no satisfaction. There's no happiness and there's no satisfaction in this. Although subjectively he may argue that this is what I need to be happy. But you look at, I remember seeing in a book photographs of a man had taken in the inner city somewhere in New York or somewhere, and photographing these alcoholics who live on the street, these drug addicts who live on the street. And you see their faces are covered with bruises and scars because they fell on the pavement. One eye looking this way, one eye looking that way, completely, totally baffled, bewildered look on their face, needing a shave, raggedy clothes. Someone show you a picture like this and ask you, do you think this man is happy? You would never say yes. You see, it's obvious to anyone that this cannot be happiness. But subjectively, no, I'm happy in this condition. This is Maya. Maya has this much power to convince us, and when we're suffering, that we're actually happy. You see, this is Maya's bewilderment. This is the meaning of conditioning of the soul. So the soul is brought off the right path of satisfaction, which means Krishna consciousness, brought off that path onto the path of sense gratification. And then when the soul becomes disturbed on that sense gratificatory path, Maya has the power to pulling him down more and more. So as Prabhupada says, even as a worm in stool, even in the body of a pig, a hog, the living entity will accept. So that means, due to Maya's association, the spirit soul becomes very weak in his spiritual consciousness. The consciousness becomes transformed or covered, and this is what we're going to be talking about. How the structure of the covering of consciousness. So, let us go ahead. Yes, I want to mention here also in that covering, there are Svarup Avarika. This is two types of ignorance that are incorporated in this covering that we're discussing. So the first is Svarup Avarika, which means ignorance of spiritual form. That our own spiritual form, our own form as a spiritual person who is an eternal servant of Krishna. And then obviously along with that there is Krishna's transcendental form, whom we are supposed to serve. So our knowledge of spiritual form becomes covered, so that we know only material form. And then there's Guna Avarika, the covering of consciousness by the three modes, which is again what I put on the board, and I'll be explaining in detail in a few moments. So Guna Avarika, that you see, consciousness is not passive, it's dynamic. Consciousness is active. But when we're covered by material nature, then our dynamic force, the dynamic force of consciousness, becomes conditioned only to function within the boundaries of the three modes of nature. The three modes of nature becomes the field of our activities, the only thing that we know. We only know goodness, passion, ignorance. And the soul is constantly moving through these three phases of material existence. So now, yes, here's an important sort of like footnote point to make at this junction. Because often we see, we've already seen it here, since we've been having these seminars and some of the questions. And so this comes up all the time, that there's a difficulty when we contemplate these things. There's often this difficulty to understand this point that, well, but if we are originally pure, if consciousness is pure and non-material, then how can it become covered by matter, which is inferior? I've just been explaining that matter diverts us from the path of our real satisfaction. So then, all right, but why should that happen? If I am actually spirit soul, if I am actually meant to be Krishna's servant, how can that happen? You see? Spirit is superior. Matter, Maya, is inferior. So often there's a lot of head scratching about this point. Even we hear the explanation, still there's this, bit of doubt or perplexity. Just how can it happen? So we want to shed a light on that nagging doubt, why it's there. And why it's there is because of the influence of Mayavadi philosophy. That's why that doubt doesn't go away. Because for the Mayavadis, in the orthodox Mayavadi philosophy of Shankaracharya, consciousness is termed, they have their term, nirvikar, which means it is untransformable. Consciousness cannot be transformed. So, therefore, you see, I don't know if I've been so much talking here in the seminar, but in the morning classes I was giving, I was pointing out how Mayavadi philosophy, although it claims to be the philosophy of Advaita, oneness, is actually the most radically Dvaita of all philosophies. Mayavadi philosophy is extreme, unbridgeable duality. Because they have Brahman and they have Maya. And there's no bridge between the two. At least not in the original orthodox Mayavadi philosophy. Because Brahman cannot be touched by Maya, it cannot be transformed by Maya. The goal of the Mayavadis is consciousness. Pure, unadulterated consciousness. And until you have achieved that goal, you're in Maya. And Maya is over here, has nothing to do with Brahman, and there's no relationship between the two. If you have a conception, well, in Mayavadi philosophy, Brahman, the energy of Brahman is Maya. No, sorry, that's your idea. That's not what Shankaracharya taught. Shankaracharya taught that Brahman has no Shakti, no energy. Brahman just is, it just sat, it just is. And it is as pure consciousness. And Maya, you see, this is where the Mayavadis juggle words. Does Maya exist? Sometimes they will say, no, it doesn't exist. It's just a pure illusion. But then if you catch them on this point, then why are you working so hard to get out of Maya if it's just an illusion? Well, it does exist on a provisional level. They give some word jugglery. And finally they will say, this whole question of the relationship of Brahman and Maya is a nirvachaniya, which means you can't talk about it. So don't ask this question. This is how they avoid the whole subject. So Maya, is for them really Maya. I mean, it's really in the sense of a kind of existential illusion which has no foundation whatsoever. And this is totally different from Vaishnava philosophy, because in Vaishnava philosophy, Maya is the Shakti of the Lord. It's Lord Vishnu Maya, it's called in the Shastra, that he has a deluding energy. But Mayavadis do not accept that. So you see, my point is that it's the Mayavadi notion that consciousness is untransformable. And so, therefore this is a big, this is a question of Mayavadi philosophy, really. How the Atma, who is Brahman, can come under the influence of Maya. How is it possible if Maya cannot be transformed? And therefore they say, anirvachaniya. Don't ask this question. So if we're having that persistent problem understanding this, you should know, because somewhere in our own understanding of things there's lodged this mistaken idea that consciousness is nirvikar, is untransformable, and it is not. According to Vaishnava philosophy, consciousness, the consciousness of the living entity, can certainly be transformed. And that is clearly presented in the Vedic scriptures themselves. I want to read now a series of quotations from the Vedas and from the Bhagavatam that completely establish that consciousness is definitely transformable. And when we understand this, then we can understand how the living entity can come under Maya and can be conditioned as we've described, and also can transform back to the unconditioned state of pure consciousness. So let us hear from Taittiriya Upanishad, chapter 2, text 7. This is famous. Prabhupada often quotes this, Raso Vaisaha. So this means he, the Lord, is rasa. And rasa means sweetness. So in Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, the ultimate motivating principle of everything that a living entity does is taste, is rasa. That there is some sweetness, some satisfaction at the back of what we were doing, and therefore we do it. We go through all this trouble to get education, so many years in school, to get diploma so that we can get a profession, and then we work in that profession hard, so many hours a day to get money. And why? Because at the end, the money translates into some kind of, you see, satisfying experience of sense gratification. So rasa is the motivating principle, and rasa vaisaha, ultimately that rasa is the Lord. Rasam hi avayam labdhanandi bhavati ko hi evanyat kaha pranyat yad esha akash anando nasyat esha hi eshanandayati. The supreme truth is rasa. The jiva becomes blissful on attaining this rasa. Who would work with the body and prana, or sensory powers, if this blissful form did not exist? He gives bliss to all. What this verse is saying is that the Lord is giving bliss to every living being, even in the conditioned state, even in the form of sense gratification of the material senses. That experience of satisfaction is ultimately coming from Krishna. Now, should we conclude from this that, well, then there's no difference? If Krishna is giving bliss to the worm and stool, and Krishna is giving bliss to me for chanting Hare Krishna, then why do I need to chant Hare Krishna? I can just do anything I want, and that bliss is my experience of Krishna. No. You see, because there are two types of bliss, and this comes back to the point of consciousness itself being transformed. So there are two types of bliss. One is called akila, Akila Rasa. So Rupa Goswami, he identifies Lord Krishna. He gives him this wonderful name in the very beginning of the Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Srila Rupa Goswami addresses Lord Krishna as Akila Rasamrita Murti. The word Akila means complete. It actually means unlimited or all-encompassing. Akila, Rasa, we've explained, the taste of sweetness, of satisfaction. Amrita, nectar. And Murti means form. So Lord Krishna is the very form of Akila Rasamrita. So to be in direct touch with Krishna through pure devotional service means to be in touch with Akila Rasa, with an unlimited ocean of bliss, spiritual bliss, transcendental bliss. The Lord is defined in Vedanta Sutra as Anandamaya Purush. So Purusha means person, Anandamaya, just like the sun is called Jyotirmaya, means streaming off Surya Dev, is an unlimited, ocean of light coming off in all directions, illuminating the whole universe. This is Jyotirmaya. So similarly, Krishna is Anandamaya. From his personality is emanating an ocean of Ananda, transcendental happiness. So the one whose consciousness is pure, then his consciousness is flooded with that happiness in relationship, in his devotional relationship with Krishna. And there is real satisfaction. Satisfaction means that then the senses are not itching anymore, they're not hungry, they're not looking here and there. The agitated, you see, the mind is agitated because the senses are agitated, looking for newer and newer forms of pleasure. A man has his wife, but another woman walks by, he finds her very beautiful. And even though he doesn't want, his mind and senses are pulling him in that direction. He feels very embarrassed, or maybe he doesn't feel very embarrassed. But if he's trying to be a good husband, then he will feel very sort of mortified inside. Why is this happening? I don't like this. It means that he's basically not satisfied. Even though he has his wife fixed up in marriage, he's still not satisfied because that is not Akila Rasa that he's experiencing. So Akila Rasa means mind and senses, everything completely satisfied. And Kila Rasa means the incomplete, material rasa. And this is what happens when one becomes disconnected from direct service to Krishna. And then one is still servant of Krishna, but serving indirectly by way of the material nature. Serving the material nature. The material nature becomes his God, in other words. So then there's only a Kila Rasa. Kila Rasa. This mundane, temporary, limited pleasure. But both are coming from Krishna. This is what is important. The ultimate source of the experience of pleasure is coming from Krishna. But Krishna is providing one kind of pleasure for his devotees, Akila Rasa, because their consciousness is pure, and another kind of pleasure, Kila Rasa, for the non-devotees because their consciousness has been transformed. By association of Maya, they are apparently satisfied. They don't care to look beyond this material pleasure. They think, just give me more and more material sense gratification. That's all I want. I don't want to know about anything transcendental. Don't tell me about. This is the attitude of most people that you know in this world. Yeah. You talk about Krishna and all that, but for me, what I want is what I can enjoy right here and now, what's before my senses. If I can just keep getting this every day, then that's my life. That's their attitude. And they're satisfied, so to speak. Not really, but it's the satisfaction of the addict who says, as long as I can get my alcohol, that's enough for me. That's my God. You see, that's my spiritual life, the spirit in the bottle. And don't talk to me about anything more. See, if I can get that, I'm cool. So Prabhupada also, he said directly that taste in the bottle of wine, that is also Krishna. He said like that. In fact, one of my godbrothers, Gaur Hari Prabhu, he became a devotee on that preaching, because he was a wino, as they say. He used to sit in the street with a bottle of wine next to him. And one of his friends became a devotee and used to come and preach to him. And he would say, I just want to drink wine. And then his friend would say, well, at least remember before you drink that Krishna is within the wine, and that is the taste you're experiencing. And so he would do like that. He would meditate on Krishna. He would pour the wine. Okay, Krishna, and then drink. And he said this actually purified him. And eventually he became a devotee. He gave it up and became a devotee. So anyway, going on. I'm talking about the transformation of consciousness. So from Srimad Bhagavatam 3.25.15, Chitta kalvasya bandhaya mukte chatmano matam guneshu saktam bandhaya ratam vapungsi muktaye. The stage in which the consciousness of the living entity is attracted by the three modes of material nature is called conditional life. But when the same consciousness is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is situated in the consciousness of liberation. If ever there was a verse that expressed that consciousness is transformable, this is it so clearly. When consciousness is attracted to the modes of material nature, that is the conditioned state. And when consciousness, in other words, think of it this way: you can yourself get a grip on this conception of transformation. If you just look in your own life, look at even now, after having taken up Krishna consciousness, to whatever degree we've taken up, even now we have to admit that the modes of nature, the presentation that the modes of nature is making to our consciousness, we have to admit that it is attractive. And we are if we're engaged in sadhana, a lot of our energy in sadhana is resisting this attraction. You see? We feel the attraction coming and we chant louder, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So that attraction is there, you see. Now imagine if you were as attracted to Krishna as you are now to material nature. You would be quite advanced, don't you think? If the mind would just flow to Krishna as easily as it flows to matter. And that's actually what it means. When the consciousness, by itself, by its own inclination, just flows to Krishna. Your eyes open in the morning and the first thing you think of is Krishna. Krishna. You want to, I have to go see Krishna. So that eagerness to see Krishna makes you rush into the shower, take your shower, put on your cloth, tilak, and rush to the Mangal Arati just to have darshan, just to see the curtains open and see the Lord. And then you feel such satisfaction just drinking in your eyes, seeing the form of the Lord. That's advancement. That's called Bhava Bhakti. You see, devotional service in ecstasy, in ecstatic attraction to Krishna. When the ears are itching to hear the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. When our ears, the ears themselves are demanding, I want to hear Krishna. That's advanced. That's Bhava Bhakti. When the tongue is crying out, I want to feel the vibration Krishna here. Put it here. You see? You can understand. Because in the consciousness of sense gratification, our senses are demanding, but not Krishna. The tongue is demanding, I want ice cream. Put ice cream here. Ears are demanding to hear some mundane music. Mind is demanding to be occupied with some mundane thoughts, some mundane entertainment or whatever. You see? So imagine if all that was replaced with Krishna. Oh, you'd be a pure devotee. And here we can actually get a grasp on the meaning of the transformation of consciousness. This is the transformation. So then goes on, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:32-19, Nunam daivena vihata ye chachuchikata shrudham hitva shrinvanti asad katha purisham vidbhujaha. Such persons, now this means such persons whose consciousness has been transformed, as stated in the previous verse, to be attracted to the modes of nature. So such persons are condemned by the supreme order of the Lord. Nunam daivena vihata. You see, this is very, very important. This is focusing on the essential difference between the Vaishnava position and the Mayavadi position. The Mayavadis do not accept that God is the supreme personality of Godhead, Ishvara Parama Krishna, the absolute controller of everything, and therefore that God, who is over and above consciousness, the ruler of consciousness, can condemn someone by his order, that your consciousness will now flow to the material nature and no longer to me. This is what Bhagavatam here is saying. Shall I read it again? You have to understand this. Such persons are condemned by the supreme order of the Lord. Why am I attracted to Maya? Ultimately because Krishna has said, you will be attracted to Maya. And why would he say that? Because he doesn't like us? No, because we're rascals. You are a rascal, so you will be attracted by Maya. Huh? Rascal means offensive. And offensive, again, this is ultimately, it comes back to this Mayavadi attitude. This is the original disease of the living entity, the Mayavadi attitude that I want to be God myself. I want to be one with Krishna in every way. I want to be Krishna. My Prabhupada says the Mayavadi philosophy is actually an attack on Krishna, as much as Krishna was attacked by demons during his Leela. Demons like Kamsa, of course, and Jarasandha, and so many others. Jarasandha attacked Mathura, Shalva attacked Dwarka. And what is their intention? To come with raised weapons and lop off the arms and the legs and the head of the Lord. So Mayavadis, their philosophy is God has no head. God has no arms, no legs, no form. He is nirakar, formless, nirvishesha, no qualities. So this is a kind of philosophical annihilation of the personality of Godhead. So this is the original disease. Remove Krishna, and then when Krishna is removed, then I can say I'm Krishna. You see, if there's no one else, no other Krishna. This was the business of this one king Paundraka. It was described in Krishna book. He got into this delusion that I am Vasudev. And then he was dressing himself up exactly with Vajyantamala and Krishna's mukut, his crown, and Srivatsa and Kaustuba and the yellow pitambara, yellow dhoti, all this signs, and even he had attached to his back an extra 2 arms with chakra and padma. And he sent a letter to Krishna that you have to give up. You have, in an unbonafide way, taken up the symbols of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You have to give up these symbols and come here and surrender to me, and I'll let you live. If you don't do this, then we will meet on the battlefield and I will destroy you. For I am Purushottam, not you. And so this letter was read out in the assembly of the Yadu dynasty, and everyone had a good laugh for a long time. Krishna and Krishna's relatives, they were all laughing, slapping their knees. And then when Krishna met Paundraka on the battlefield and saw him dressed that way, Krishna also had to laugh again. He was having a good laugh. And then of course he cut off his head. So this is the disease of the living entity. He wants to be Krishna. And so then then Krishna condemns him. So this is your offensive attitude. Then your consciousness will now be attracted to the triguna, the three modes of material nature. So such persons are condemned by the supreme order of the Lord because they are averse to the nectar of the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are compared to stool-eating hogs. They give up hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord and indulge in hearing of the abominable activities of materialistic persons. Srila Prabhupada said, this was I was there to hear Srila Prabhupada give these Bhagavat Dharma discourses in September 1972 in New Vrindavan, and in the course of his talks there, he said something I've never forgotten. He said that the easy way to know who is a transcendentalist and who is a materialist is to see what they read. The transcendentalist will be attracted to read Srimad Bhagavatam. The materialist will be attracted to read the newspaper. You see? And this is just what this verse is saying. They give up hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord and indulge in hearing of the abominable activities of materialistic persons. And they are addicted to that. Every morning I have to have my coffee and cigarette and newspaper. Every morning, without fail. Otherwise, you can't start the day. You have to sip your coffee, read the newspaper, cricket scores and all these things. And then that gives a kind of apparent satisfaction to the mind. Now I can go to work, I can start my day. You see? And devotee, what does he hear every morning? Every morning he has to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he feels enlivened and enlightened to start his day of devotional service. This is the difference. So this is an attraction, this is a taste. And is ordained by Krishna. You see? So we may question, how can consciousness be transformed? You better believe it can be transformed because Krishna is the Supreme Lord. And he says, your consciousness is now transformed. And it is transformed. And there's nothing you can do about it. Until he relents and says, all right, now you can be attracted to me. But then we have to prove ourselves that we really want to be his devotees again. So, Rig Veda 10:129-4. Kamastad agre samavartati manaso rita pratamam yadasit. In the beginning there was desire, which was the primal germ of the mind. So, desire means just what I've described, the flowing of consciousness to the material nature. That flowing of consciousness is the flow of material desire. Desire for matter is material desire. And Rig Veda says that this desire, this basic urge to be attracted to the material nature is the seed, the seed of germination of the mind, what we know as the material mind. You keep asking about this consciousness and mind. This is what you have to understand. Consciousness is the background, and when consciousness begins to flow towards the modes of material nature, that is the seed of the mind. The mind is a covering of material nature which allows us to access the forms of matter. And I'm going to be explaining this. This is being presented here in this diagram, how that comes about. You see, just like you want to see them, because actually matter is far, far, far away from the soul. Just like the moon is far away from us. And actually this is an analogy, that relationship of the living entity, pure spirit soul, to Maya is like a child trying to hold the moon in the hand. But it can be done in a sense. Here's the analogy. Very nice analogy that explains everything very clearly. Imagine a child. Like in India, they have flat roof. Most of the houses have flat roofs, so you can go up on top of the roof. So mother takes child up on the roof to see the night sky. And the child is looking and seeing the full moon, Purnima moon, hanging very large in the sky. And the child wants to grasp the moon. And the child's becoming restless and complaining, reaching, "Mother, mother, I want the moon." And mother patiently tries to explain to the child, it's not possible for you to have the moon in your hand. But child insists. You see? So now, what is this analogy so far? We see that the living entity is actually always the beloved one in the arms of the Lord. Because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, "Mama aivangsa jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manakshastan indriyani prakristani krakarshati." That even the jiva who is in material nature, the conditioned living entity, is still always my amsa. That means my part. Like a child is part of the body of the parent, just externally manifest. So this is what Krishna is saying. The jiva is always my amsa, my beloved one. Jiva bhuta sanatana, eternally. That never changes. This is important to understand. Our position in relationship with the personality of Godhead never changes, even after we come to this material world. We're still intimately connected with Him. This is from His point of view, like mother to child. But now, child is looking at the moon, absorbed in the moon, and wants the moon. Mother's trying to explain, you can't have the moon, but child is insisting, I must have the moon. So what does mother do? So if she's a clever mother, she gets a small round mirror, the kind of mirror used for putting on tilak. And she guides the child's fingers to hold this mirror. And the little fingers, she's helping the child hold this mirror. And then she positions the mirror in such a way that the reflection of the moon is in the mirror and the mirror is in the hand. And then the child becomes happy. Ha 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 ha. I have the moon in my hand. And this child is satisfaction, you see. Ha 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 ha. All the time the child is in the lap of the mother, that's the fact. But now the child's consciousness is elsewhere, right? Child is not thinking of mother anymore. Child is thinking of holding the moon. Even mother is making the arrangement that this illusion is possible. So that mirror put in the hand of the child, this is an instrument, a lens by which that illusion can be made. And that is the mind. Just like moon is actually far away. Also with telescope. With a telescope, 2 lenses in a tube. You can apparently bring the moon very near, so you can see the mountains and the valleys on the moon. The moon seems to be so close you could touch it. So that instrument that brings the moon near, this is like our mind. We require such an instrument so that we can have a fix on this material, on the modes of nature. Without the mind, what will we know about the world? You see? So the mind, and the germ of the mind is that desire. That I want to be in Maya. I want to have access to the material energy. That's the germ of the mind. So then that desire, by the grace of the Lord, manifests as a mind with its sensory openings, so that our consciousness can be flooded with the material experience. And we become conditioned by that, as I've already explained. I just want to go on endlessly in material nature. So this is all arranged by the Lord. And this is His loving plan, ultimately. Before we go pointing the finger at Krishna, oh, you did this to me, we should understand why He's done it. Prabhupada gives another example. Just like a child, again, another example with child and mother. A little girl, she sees mother cooking. And she begins to bother mother. I want to cook too. You're cooking, I want to cook. But mother knows this little girl, she's so little, her body and is not even coordinated yet. She's clumsy, she drops things. So it's dangerous for her to come near the fire. She's liable to hurt herself. So mother first of all tries to pacify. No, later, you have to grow up a bit. No, mother, I want to cook now. So then mother goes out and gets for the child a toy kitchen set. You see? A little toy stove, toy pots and pans. And so the child can sit out there in the garden, happily make mud pies and so many things. And she has her little dolly in the high chair, and she cooks mud pies and serves them to her little baby. And she's happy, you see. But this is just play acting. This is just Maya. You see? But this pacifies the child for the time being until the child matures, and then the child can be taught to really cook. So this attraction to Maya, it also can be compared in this way. This is a state of immaturity in spiritual development. So it's provisional. It's a lesson that we have to learn. And it's actually a preparation for spiritual life. After we have learned this lesson, that I'm not God, that I'm not the supreme controller, I'm not the supreme enjoyer, that I'm not independent, I am dependent. These lessons must be learned vis-a-vis material nature. The school of hard knocks, as they say. And after we learn this, then we can become amenable, we can become properly, have the proper attitude towards approaching the Lord through devotional service. So, now back to the material nature. Next point is that it's not only just conditioned souls who have this transformed consciousness, attraction to material nature, who are here in the material world. Also the pure devotees are here. In fact, I'm not going to read the whole thing, I'm just going to mention Baladev Vidyabhushan, in his purport, Govinda Bhasya purport to Vedanta Sutra, he makes this point very clearly in unmistakable language, that the liberated souls and the conditioned souls, they're both part and parcel of the Lord, and they're both at the same time also experiencing, they also know the material manifestation of the Lord. And they even dwell within that material manifestation. Both conditioned souls and liberated souls. Both of them. But the liberated souls are not at all affected. Even though they come into this material world, like the conditioned souls do, and even accept the material body, their connection to Krishna is not at all impeded. So the reason they come is different. They don't come here to enjoy the material nature. They come here to serve the Lord. And so we have this nice verse, famous verse by Sri Prahlad Maharaj. Naivo dvije para duratyaya vaitaranyas tadvirya gayana mahamrita magna chittaha suchitto vimukha chittasa indriyarta maya sukhaya bharam udvahato vimudham. O best of the great personalities, he's addressing Lord Nrsimhadev, I am not at all afraid of material existence. For wherever I stay, I am fully absorbed in thoughts of your glories and activities. So here, Prahlad Maharaj says, it's very clear what he's saying. He's saying, material nature doesn't disturb me at all. I'm here, but it doesn't disturb me at all, because I am fully absorbed in God consciousness. My concern, now this is the reason why he's here, is only for the fools and rascals who are making elaborate plans for material happiness and maintaining their families, societies, and countries. I am simply concerned with love for them. So a Vaishnava, a pure devotee, is actually a manifestation of the mercy of Krishna. Krishna manifests this material world and places these wayward jivas into it, but also he sends his pure devotees into this world, who are embodiments of the Lord's own compassion for these fallen souls. They come into this world, the Lord's pure devotees, to reawaken Krishna consciousness in these conditioned souls. This is so nicely expressed in this verse. Then finally, Nivrittatarse upagivamadat bhavausadat shrutamano biramat ka uttama shloka gunanavadat puman virajeta vina pashugnat. Glorification of the Supreme Personality of God is performed in the parampara system, that is, it is conveyed from spiritual master to disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. So, nivrittitarsar upagiyamanat. Those who have no attraction to material nature, they are taking full pleasure from glorifying Krishna, from chanting his holy name, from Krishna Katha. But still, then it goes on, descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul, undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease such hearing such glorification of the Lord except a butcher, or one who is killing his own self? Pashugnat means one who kills the pashu, meaning one's own self, or the pashu, meaning other living entities. So, Bhava Ausaraj, this is medicine for Bhava. Bhava means material existence. Ausara. Aushara means medicine. Bhava means material existence. So, for the liberated souls, hearing and chanting about Krishna is pure nectar. For the conditioned souls, it is medicine. You see? Because we still have this material attraction. This is our disease. So we should take up the chanting of Hare Krishna under rule and regulation. We don't have spontaneous attraction to it. We don't have spontaneous taste for it. But still we should take it up as sadhana. And by repeated chanting, then, as Rupa Goswami says, giving this nice example in his Upadeshamrita, it is like the cure for jaundice, the traditional Indian cure for jaundice. I once had jaundice years ago. You get it from drinking water. I visited India once and drank some polluted water, not knowing. And when I returned, after I returned to the West, I went to Switzerland, and suddenly I got struck by fever and chills at the same time, and my whole body became filled with aches and pains. And after a day, then my skin turned completely yellow, even my eyes. My eyes were yellow. And another effect of jaundice is that sweets like rasgul, rasmalai, these nice sweets, sandesh, they taste bitter. You put them on your tongue because it's a liver disease, so then the whole sense of taste is changed. But that is the cure. Sugar needs to be put into the liver in great amounts, and that will then drive the jaundice out. So I was in a temple, in Geneva Temple at the time. My godbrother Guru Garanga Prabhu was the temple president, and he was very, very attentive that the Mangal Arti sweets offered to Shri Gordatai, he would save in his office for guests, because different guests would come in the day, and this was his principle, to always have sweets available. And so he was rather disturbed when I got jaundice, because he had to give me all the sweets. We had a kind of joking relationship. So he had to give me the sweets. There were no sweets for guests for about 2 weeks. I was eating all the sweets. And the sweets tasted bitter, you see. But as medicine I had to take. And then the sugar goes into the liver and drives the disease out. And on that day, when the sweet starts to taste sweet again, you know that the cure is coming. So after about 2 weeks, then the Mangalarti sweets actually started to taste nice, and I started to become reattached. Before it was just medicine, you know. Ugh, it was a real tapasya to eat all these sweets. But then they started to taste sweet, and I started to become attached. And when Guru Garanga knew this, then the next morning, he brought the Mangalarti sweet plate, the same plate. He played a joke on me. And he piled the plate up with white typewriter erasers, you see. It looks kind of like sandesh, but it's rubber. And he put that in front of me. Of course, I saw just what they were, but he was hoping that I would take one and bite it. I started laughing as soon as I saw that. Oh, come on, I'm not going to eat this. Anyway, it's a funny story. But you see, for one who has disease, then, this sweetness of the holy name is not so available because of the disease. But still, we should take it as we take sweets when we have jaundice. And that will